I thought it was on, but it started already.
Lights are hot, aren't
Long meeting it.
Mics are sensitive.
It's 2 o'clock, so we'll proceed with the commission meeting for Thursday, October 20, 2022. I call it to order, and I want to ask Commissioner Neal to lead us in invocation and Commissioner Cook to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Would everyone please stand?
Join me in prayer, please. Our Father, we just thank you for this beautiful weather. We thank you for another day in which we could serve you. We thank you for the men and women of the Joint Water and Sewer that are so dedicated to the jobs that they perform. We ask you to protect our first responders. We ask that you would just be with us as we go about doing the work of the Joint Water and Sewer Commission, as we go about doing the work of Glynn County, to serve the citizens here to our utmost ability. We just thank you for who you are, Lord, and all that you provide. And it's in your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
There's no one here for public comment, so we'll proceed to the committee updates. We had 2 committee meetings yesterday, the Facilities Committee and the Finance Committee. At the Facilities Committee, we approved contract awards for the repainting and rehabilitation of the Glen Place Mall and Oglethorpe elevated storage tanks. Also, the inspection for that particular project. We also approved engineering service contract for designing of sewer system improvements, extensions in the Brunswick Villa area. We also approved a contract award for administration building, painting and repair of stucco. And we had a change order that we approved for Arco water and sewer improvements. That project's going along quite well. And then we also approved the contract award for paving services for Pump Station 2002 force main replacement, which is on Arnold Road, which will be, that work needs to be done and completed by the end of the month, by the end of December, rather. All of those were approved subject to the approval of the full commission today. On the water production report, you know, we have 9 wells on the main one, and only the Goodyear well was out for just a little bit, but now it's back online, and we're so blessed to have that many wells. We have a lot of wells on the island also and on Southport. So, and we have, I want to commend our staff for maintaining those wells in such good conditions. On the water plant, wastewater plant flows, there's another issue this month because we had a fair amount of rain. The Academy Creek plant went up from an average of about 50% capacity to 79% capacity. The Dunbar Creek actually exceeded its capacity, and that's because we had 10.3 inches of rain for the month of September. On the capital project report, we saw some good photos. The Academy Creek project is proceeding. It's been paved now. It's looking a lot better, and the contract is in the final phases of making final equipment startups and also final adjustments. So that project should be fairly completed pretty soon. That completes my report, and I'll ask Commissioner Duncan to give his Finance Committee report.
Thank you, Chairman.
Three items I wanted to mention briefly. One is we had a report out from Malden and Jenkins regarding our annual audit. There's good news there. I won't take any other thunder away from Dave. He'll give us more details as a part of our discussion today. On the monthly financial statements, just one item I want to point out is that the sales remain above or ahead of budget. That's a good thing. Although September was a very wet month and we sold less water, particularly for irrigation, but the sales are still above or ahead of budget. That's a good thing. And then another is very likely to touch on investment market. It's trending negative. We have a number of investment instruments that we carry as a part of our ability to earn additional funds. And so it doesn't make sense to us to invest any further as the market as a whole is trending negative. And so, as always, cash becomes king. One thing we did discuss about that to help improve our position where we can practically do it is if we are able to perhaps purchase ahead on some items. And I've just used pipe as an example. So I offered that discussion yesterday very briefly in that if we're able to do that because of the cost of pipe and many other materials continue to escalate, that if we're able to buy those now versus a year from now, that we can leverage some improvement there. So that was the discussion we had yesterday, Chairman. That completes my report.
Thank you. Before we get into the approval section, I want to request Commissioner Roll is requested to be excused from the meeting. She's attending the homeless summit. So can I have a motion to excuse Commissioner Roll?
Motion.
Second.
Motion is second. All in favor? Motion carries 6-0. Thank you very much. We'll move to the approval section of the meeting. We have the minutes from the September 15th, 2022 regular meeting. Do I have a motion to accept those minutes?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor? Motion carries 6-0. Item 2 is the fiscal 2021-2022 financial audit presentation / acceptance.
As you mentioned, also good afternoon, Commissioners, ladies and gentlemen. As you mentioned earlier, yesterday, Laughlin and Jenkins' partner, Trey Scott,
Yes.
presented the results of our audit fiscal year ending June 30th, 2022. Skip the first couple of pages of that presentation as it's really just background on Laughlin and Jenkins, except to say that they're very experienced in working with government entities and water and sewer utilities specifically. Basically, as the Brunswick-Glynn Joint Water and Sewer Commission, we are responsible for our financial statements, and Laughlin and Jenkins is responsible for expressing an opinion on those statements. The type of opinion that was issued after their audit of this year's financials was a unmodified report, which means a clean report. There were no findings, no management notes. Essentially, everything is in order, and users of our financial statements can rely on them. Some of the highlights from our financial statements on the balance sheet side of things, our assets and deferred outflows increased 37.6 million to a level of 245.2 million at the end of the year. Part of that is net book value of our capital assets increased by 20.3 million. Liabilities and deferred inflows increased 29.4 million to arrive at 76.3 million at year end. Significant portions of that increase were new GFA loan draws, and of course the new bonds that were issued, approximately 15.8 million on the bonds. On the revenue and expense side, our revenues increased by 1.4 million, going from 35 to 36.4 million in fiscal year 22. Expenses also increased, which is no surprise. revenues, they only increased 1 million to put us at 26.7 million at year end. So we saw a $400,000 increase in our net operating income, which at year end was $9,700,000. Overall, these are excellent trends considering the state of the economy. I'd say we're doing our business quite well. Other notes on or comments on operating revenues and expenses. Notable changes in non-operating income. A loss on investments, which just alluded to a moment ago, of $1.2 million. That's a non-cash loss, an accounting entry only. Basically a fair market value adjustment to the fixed income securities that we hold until maturity. There's also interest expense of $1.6 million over the course of last year. The end result was a net change in position or equity to $8.2 million, down from $9 million in 21. The operating cash flows were $16.8 million for the year. That's a increase of $800,000 over 2021. The primary uses of our cash was $25.3 million on capital assets, payments of $4.2 million for principal and interest on long-term debt, and proceeds from debt, basically the GFA loans and the new bonds issued, totaled $28.3 million. Basically, our cash and cash equivalents increased $4.7 million, going from 23.2 to 27.9 million for the year. With regard to other reports and comments that Maudlin Jenkins issues as part of their audit and review, there's something called the Yellow Book Report. This tests our overall compliance, things like internal controls, compliance with laws and regulations, contracts and grants. They found no compliance issues. Also on a single audit report where they test internal controls and compliance relative to two major programs, those programs being the Clean Water State Revolving Fund and the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund, 6.1 million and 2.2 million respectively. No compliance issues were found there either. And that essentially the extent of their presentation yesterday. At which point we asked for acceptance of our audit and financial results for 2022.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move that we accept the audit statements as provided by Maudlin and Jenkins as submitted.
Second motion.
Motion is second. Any questions or comments?
One comment, Mr. Scott did indicate yesterday that how easy it is to work with our financial staff here. Made a note that that was probably the exception to the rule on his auditing. So he was very pleased and very thankful to be able to work with such good staff, and I wanted to pass that along to everyone so they knew that was what he noted about that. So,
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Hearing none, all in favor? Motion carries 6-0. Thank you very much.
thank you.
Next item is contract award Glenn Place Mall and Oglethorpe Elevated Storage Tanks Rehabilitation Project. Mr. Burrs?
Excuse me, yes, sir. We went out for bid on September 1st, advertisement for blasting to bare metal and repainting two of our elevated water storage tanks. The one at Glenn Place Mall, which is visible from the spur, and then the Oglethorpe site, which is on St. Simon's Island near Marcy's Edge. That one is hidden to a certain extent unless you were on Lawrence Road. The scope of work, again, is to repaint both of these tanks. They'll be blasted to bare metal and repainted like we did to the Prince Street tank 2 years ago. We had a pre-bid teleconference and site visits on September the 20th. We received 4 bids, which included cost of extra as-needed work items and a bid alternate for a higher quality finish coat. The low bid was submitted by Tank Pro Incorporated with a total cost including as-needed work items of $1,396,617. I will note that Tank Pro's base bid included the higher quality finish coat, so we are not technically awarding that alternate because it's included in the bid. But that is a 15-year paint on the finish coat rather than a 10-year paint for the finish coat, so we're getting an additional 5 years worth of lifespan on the paint. I will note that these bids are above the budgeted amount for this project. As a note, 2 years ago, we bid out a 750,000 gallon tank on Prince Street, had it blasted to bare metal and painted with the exact same coating for $550,000. Both of these tanks are 500,000 gallon tanks, and as you see, based off 2 of them costing just shy of $1.4 million, they're $700,000 apiece. So in 2 years, prices have went up substantially. But the additional funds will be brought out of our repair and replacement reserve. And Tank Pro was the contractor that actually completed the previous tank painting jobs from 2 years ago.
Chairman, I'd like to move that the Brunswick-Glynn Joint Water and Sewer Commission award a contract in the amount of $1,396,617 to Tank Pro, Inc. for the elevated storage tank rehabilitation project for the Glynn Place Mall and Oglethorpe sites.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any questions or comments?
Putting our logo on them, on both of them, yes, sir.
Have we dealt with the county and city, and maybe the tourism and development, not, I can't think of the name, the tourism or whatever they're called.
Well, we'll reach back out to the county. Previously, they did not have interest, but they do have new leadership now, so maybe they have interest in it now.
I think that, or even, the tourism department, I mean,
Right.
There's not much for us to advertise compared to, somebody who's trying to advertise the Golden Isles and Glynn County as a whole. I know
We'll certainly speak with the local partners about it, because ultimately the logo's the last thing that goes on, so we've got time to get that situated. And it's not gonna cost any more to paint one logo versus another.
Right, sure, yeah. And if there's an added cost, I mean, we tell
Yes.
them, hey, this is what we're paying, if y'all want.
Right.
There's $10 ad to do their logos, and that should be on them, but in my opinion, we just, there's other organizations that are not private organizations, but community organizations who probably could use advertising better if we could.
Sure.
Yeah, the Glen Place Mall is a very visible tank,
Very
whereas
visible
Oglethorpe tank, very few people even know it's there.
Kinda gotta know where that one's at.
Yeah.
Now, I'm specifically on the Glen Place, but really just all of them in the future. I mean, just consider that when we.
Sure.
Any other questions, comments? Hearing none, all in favor? Motion carries 6-0. Next item is contract award inspection services, elevated storage tank painting. Mr. Burris?
Yes, sir. As we just awarded a contract to paint these 2 tanks, we would like to have a specialist be part of the inspection of the both prep and painting coats that go on. Who we've used in the past is Chapman Technical Services. They provide ongoing inspection services of our tanks to provide us with updates on what maintenance is needed, and also tell us what the priorities would be should we need to go out for a major tank painting job like we just awarded. So the request here is to award a contract to Chapman Technical Services to inspect both tank painting jobs at $27,000. We painted 2 tanks 2 years ago, and at that point, the inspection cost was $29,500, so this is the rare occasion where things have went down for us. So, request is to award this contract to Chapman Technical Services.
I'll move that we award an amount of $27,000 to Chapman Technical Service LLC for construction inspection services for the elevated storage tank rehabilitation project at Glen Place Mall and Oglethorpe sites.
I'll second the motion.
Motion second. Any questions?
I have one question. Do we have cell phone services, or do we rent out some space on?
Yes, sir.
One
They
or
are
both
rented
of them?
out, and as part of the contract, the contractor is responsible for maintaining those services throughout the life of the project.
Right.
So they can bring in temporary, they call them cows, but they bring in temporary cows that they can hold the cell service towers up on, but they're all required to maintain service the entire time.
Of course, the key thing with having someone do the inspection is that we don't have any of our employees climbing up on top of the towers. And these are people that do it consistently and are 110% understanding of safety procedures,
So we may offer the opportunity for our project manager, if he's interested, to climb the tank with Mr. Chapman, but certainly having Mr. Chapman's expertise will be beneficial.
That's all.
Any other questions? All in favor? Motion carries 6-0. Next item is contract award engineering services, Brunswick Villa Area Sewer Extension Project. Mr. Burris?
Todd, can you pull up the map for us? So Brunswick Villa area of Glynn County encompasses the neighborhoods off Townsend Street between Altama Avenue and the Railroad Spur, or Whitlock, whichever you prefer. In this area, there's approximately 200 homes and businesses without current access to public sewer. They all have access to public water, but not sewer. However, as part of this project, we will be conducting an analysis to confirm whether there's any necessary improvements to the water system. As you've well know, we've had an ongoing strategy to prioritize the expansion of our services into currently unserved areas that are adjacent to our existing public systems, and this was a prime target for that. Went out for engineering on September the 2nd for this. We held a non-mandatory pre-proposal teleconference on September the 22nd. Had 17 firms interested in the work at that point and actually received 6 proposals on October the 6th. We had a 3-member panel score the proposals, and the highest scoring proposal was submitted by Kimley Horn and Associates with a score of 93 out of 100 on average. One of the items in this proposal that's different than our previous construction contracts or our engineering contracts is full-time construction inspection services. Most of our projects, we have allowed a budget for construction inspections capped at 20 hours per week of construction. This engineering contract, we are requesting them to be on site the entire time construction activities are ongoing by the contractor upon construction commencing, so they're budgeted for 40 hours per week. If we do not use the entire budget, the contract amount will come in lower than what is being requested today. The total proposal total is $486,780. Kimley Horn actually had the second most cost-effective proposal. The lowest one was about $10,000 cheaper, but the higher scoring proposal came from Kimley Horn, and pricing was considered in the scoring. They have worked with us in the past. We're actually getting very near bidding out a pump station rehab job that they have recently completed, and staff has been pleased with their work to date. The contract for production of a bid-ready package will be 180 days.
I'll move the Brunswick-Glynn Joint Water and Sewer Commission award a contract in the amount of $486,780 to Kimley Horn and Associates Incorporated for engineering and construction inspection services for the Brunswick Villa Area Sewer Extension Project.
I'll second the motion.
Motion is second. Do you have any questions? Hearing none, all in favor? Motion carries 6-0. Next item is a contract award administration building painting services. Mr. Burris?
Yes, sir. One of our capital projects in this year's capital plan was to make improvements to select JWSC facilities, including the Academy Creek and Harrington warehouses and some improvements to the admin building. This improvement is to paint the exterior of the admin building and make some stucco repair. We received 3 quotes for this, with the lowest quote coming from C. Merrill Construction at $30,000. C. Merrill Construction is the contractor that is currently performing the renovation construction services for the new Glynn County Elections Board next door to our facility, so they will be able to perform these services at the same time, which is why they probably are the cheapest, because they're already on site. So we recommend moving forward with this award for stucco repair and painting services to C. Merrill Construction in the amount of $30,000. The contract will be separately held from the county contract.
Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion that we, I move that the Brunswick-Glynn Joint Water Sewer Commission award a contract amount of $30,000 to C. Merrill Construction for stucco repair and painting services for the administration building. Do you have a few questions?
Second.
Motion second. Any questions?
A few. I noticed that one of the other vendors specifically laid out significantly more scope. That's not to say that there's a scope delta, but
Right.
have we confirmed with C. Merrill that they're planning to do the handrails, the trim, the doors, and all that stuff, and not just the stuff with the block?
Yes, they're going to perform all the duties. It's just they gave a more brief.
But we confirmed they're
Yes,
doing it.
that's correct.
And the second thing, I know we're using elastomeric paint, which I think is great, but are we putting on mold inhibitor and?
That hasn't been discussed, but
I'd recommend you at least explore now.
Okay.
You know, at the hospital, we've had, some buildings newer buildings that we painted with that, and it's cut down significantly on pressure washing, because you don't have to pressure wash it every year. Oh, it doesn't turn green on you.
we'll certainly check into it.
I don't know what the cost delta is, but I don't think it's much to have a mold inhibitor. I keep saying mold, it's actually mildew inhibitor.
Right. Okay. Certainly.
Good comments. No other comments? All in favor? Motion carries 6-0. Next item is change order number 1, Arco Water and Sewer Improvements Project. Mr. Klein?
Good afternoon, Commissioners. For your consideration, this is change order number 1 for our Arco Area Water and Sewer Extension Project. A little brief background here. Staff did receive and reviewed a change order number 1 recommendation letter from the engineer record, Thomas and Hutton. The contractor has requested additional funding to cover an amount of water line that was originally in the design, but was unfortunately not included on the bid form. So when the project was actually bid, the quantity was less than what was originally designed for. So that was short by 2,600 linear feet of water main. And in gathering pricing for this change order from the contractor, there was a material price increase since the point of the bid of $5.42 per linear foot. So that is included in the change order amount as well. Also included is a little short section of gravity main to facilitate connection to 2 other properties, some flowable fill to repair some roadways, and then also some clearing and grubbing, which will complement the easement acquisition that the board approved last month, which actually allow us to do a portion of the gravity sewer extensions out of the pavement. So that is also part of the change order total there. Also included is a time extension request from the contractor for 135 additional days. Time needed largely due to supply chain delays. It's very familiar these days. In particular, manhole structures are difficult to get and obtain, and also the time involved with the easement acquisition that's actually streamlining the project a little bit for us in the long run. So staff did review it, and this is the recommendation for change order for your consideration: $166,003.78, and 135 additional days added to the contract time.
Can I have a motion?
I'll make the motion. I'll move the Brunswick-Glynn Joint Water and Sewer Commission recommend approval of change order number 1 to the Arco Area Water and Sewer Extension to UWS Incorporated to increase the contract amount by $166,003.78 and a contract time by 135 consecutive calendar days.
Have a second?
I'll second that.
Motion second. Any questions, comments?
I do have a question. How long was the time frame from when we first purchased the pipe at the lower cost until we're now? Do you have just a sense of, was it 6 months or?
Correct, Commissioner. The project notice to proceed was issued in March of 2022, and so that amount of time, yeah.
This sometime late August, early September.
Right. The letter coming from, well, the change order action letter with advisement from engineer was on October, so that amount of time.
That certainly speaks to what Commissioner Duncan mentioned earlier about the possibility of buying some pipe, particularly to save on cost over the long run. So,
What percentage of increase was that $5.42 a linear foot? What does that represent?
Percent increase. I'll get you the exact number, Commissioner. I don't have that right off the top of my head. Yeah. If we look at the.
What was the initial time frame it was supposed to be completed?
November. Project originally, contract time scheduled to complete next month.
So we're asking for an additional 135.
Days on top of that.
What percent are they complete now?
They are about 30, right at 30% complete.
They're gonna have to hit it pretty hard then.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. They've done what they can do as far as the water line that they did order initially, and then also they've already started on the sewer as well. So they have, we actually have new customers connected already on the water lines. So
One question regarding the material acquisition, is my understanding correct that is the precast enclosures, manholes, if you will, are currently the pinch point for moving the project forward, and that's what why the contractor is asking for the time extension.
Commissioner, that's correct. That's a large part of it. They're working with the structures that they do have on hand, they've been able to get, and that's really dictating which segments of gravities they can
8%.
proceed on. But correct, some of the structures are what I would call a pinch point.
To your question, Commissioner Neal, it was a 12.2% increase in
Thank you.
pipe costs.
Okay, 12. We were thinking 8.
Uh,
In a 6-month period of time, it went up that much.
Mr. Klein, when you
But
say.
the pipe actually went up more than that, right? This is a
Yeah, because that
labor-
includes labor, so yeah,
Yeah,
it's probably
yeah.
closer to double that because
Yeah.
half of it's probably labor.
Oh, right, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are we running into any problems securing curb stops, and that kind of stuff for water lines and laterals?
Yes. We actually are, I say down, we have a supply of curb stops on hand, but for all new installations, but we are lower than we typically like to be on those items, so we're not out of curb stops. We can still install new meter setups, but we are waiting. The last order we put in, they told us 18 weeks to get curb stops. That was about 6 weeks ago. So, like I said, we're not going to run out, but we're going to be a lot lower by the time they show up than we would like to be, given the situation. Also on meters, we know they've been a long lead time, although we were fortunate this week. We put a shipment of meters in and we're told in March, and we got them Tuesday. So I don't know if they shipped them to the wrong place, but we weren't sending them back, so we'll take it.
So in terms of the curb stops, we're not in danger of not serving customers. It's just our stocking levels have gone below the minimum
Right.
that we prefer to carry.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
That is correct.
Mr. Klein, it says that. The water line was shown on the plans but omitted from the original bid form. When you say that, you mean the bid form that the engineer produced that they filled out, or do you mean the bid form that they turned in?
The bid form that was advertised.
The engineer
quantity
produced the bid form,
was
and
deficient.
then they filled out the bid form as produced.
They filled out the bid form as produced, so they did not do their own takeoffs. They made the assumption that the takeoffs on the bid form are correct.
That is correct.
That's our understanding, yes, sir. They didn't report at least the discrepancy. No, none of the bidders did.
The next question would be, did anybody catch that? I mean, 'cause, does this change who would have been the low bid?
No, sir.
So just a point of doing business, I mean, why is our engineer telling people what the quantity is? Design the thing, ask for a unit price, but don't tell them what the unit is, they should do their own takeoffs. I mean, my opinion, that's what y'all work out, but, okay, we'll do. So it was engineer's mishap, not the.
There's probably both partly to blame. The contractor should have done their takeoff to confirm, and the engineer should have got the takeoff correct the first time.
So that poses a whole new series of questions then. Should the engineer be responsible for this overage that we're incurring? And did the contractor perhaps see it, and not report it, so that he could get the change order?
Yeah, I mean, that's.
Those are just business questions that,
Yeah, those are my concern. I mean, people make mistakes, I get that, but that's cost of doing business. And, ultimately, you make a mistake, you're not as profitable as you may be. So now they're not only getting markup on this, but they're getting for the actual cost, but they're saying, hey, the product's more expensive than we bought originally. So it's costing us even more than it's not just like, well, we would pay this anyhow, now we're paying more for the markup, and we're paying a change order fee, which is arguably higher than what their original fee would be if they got included in the lump sum.
But they've shown justification as to what they got quoted and also what the price is at the time.
What'd you say, benefit?
They've shown documentation that the increase was based on an increase in pipe.
No, I know, but I'm saying that they had called it originally, we've
Yeah.
been paying for it at the original cost,
Yeah,
not the markup cost. And then also, we've been paying, I'm making numbers up here, but a 6% margin instead of a 15% margin,
Yeah.
whatever those margins are. But the change order fee is arguably higher than what the markup is in the original contract.
To your point, 100%, the pipe costs went up, that increase did incur, but all the other unit items were already in the contract, so we're using the bid amount for those except for pipe. So that price was held, it's just different quantities. And we have worked with the engineer, and we're working with the engineer to determine whether they would be willing to consider compensating us for the increases due to their errors.
My problem, again, I'm not saying that very well, but the contractor not only getting their cost covered, but making additional profit on their own mistake.
Because the quantity increased, so,
Not
yeah,
only
there are more
quantity,
pipe,
but
yes.
It's a change order, so there's a change order fee built in there, right?
Not additional, not for the fact of
They
being a
don't get
change
bill
order.
They don't get a percentage for change orders?
No, sir.
The change orders are direct cost with no overhead.
Well, the overhead that was built into their original bid. So they bid the quantities at $44.40 for 8-inch pipe originally. Yes, that had overhead included in there. Now it's at $49.60 or whatever it is, and the $5.20 or 40 cents, that's the pipe increase. They did not increase their overhead amount on that.
So they're not getting a percentage.
And unit price contracts, the way is normally done is the engineer does estimate the quantities, and it says there's an estimated amount.
Estimate.
And it it is, because you never know until it's finally installed. And they might be up and down for the final amount. On some projects, you might even delete a line because you have a problem with an owner or something like this. And on this project, if you read through the entire paperwork, we're gonna be saving on some of our pipe prices on the sewer lines, I think, because of a change or some paving that we might have to do. But so far as the contractor is responsible for notifying if there's an obvious error in the documents ahead of time for an addendum. But generally, contractors, they get the project, they bid it based on what it is, and everybody bid the same thing, and that's what you want, to make sure they bid the same number of quantities, and that's how the contract was awarded. So the engineer didn't do anything wrong there, they just inadvertently left off or had the quantity wrong for the amount of water line. Any other questions? All in favor indicate by raising your right hand. Motion carries 6-0. Thank you, Mr. Klein. Next item, number 8, is declaration of inventory/equipment as surplus. Mr. Burrs?
Yes, sir. So we have two items before you to declare as surplus. The first one is a 2003 Ford Ranger that has found its home in our planning and construction division for 20 years. It has had repeated hydraulic issues, and it was as last year was replaced by a newer vehicle and is no longer needed by the department. The second item is listed as 136 SCADA data flow systems telemetry control units. If you recall, last year we redid our lift station SCADA system and converted to a system called VT SCADA. Data flow systems was our previous SCADA unit, and we took these units down. They have a tremendous market in Florida, and these units will be going to Bonita Springs, Florida due to damages from Hurricane Ian. They had these systems. They actually needed 300 of them, and we were able to provide 136 of them to help them get back on their feet. So we had no use for them anymore, and happy to help out another utility recover from the disaster that they are working with. So this is to declare them as surplus, both of these items, and allow staff to dispose of them in the manner most beneficial to joint water and sewer. So the Ranger will be put on gov deals if anybody needs a work truck.
I'll move the Brunswick-Glynn Joint Water and Sewer Commission approve the above listed items as surplus to be disposed of in a manner most beneficial to the JWSC.
Second.
Motion second. Any questions? Hearing none, all in favor? Motion carries 6-0. Item 9, contract award paving services for pump station 2002 force main replacement. Mr. Burrs?
Yes, sir. Pump Station 2002 is on Arnold Road, immediately adjacent to Fiddler's Restaurant, if you're familiar with Fiddler's. There's an existing iron force main that leaves the station that has reached the end of its useful life. We had an engineering firm, TR Long Engineering, designed improvements that were supposed to go in the north shoulder of the road, but due to considerable utility conflicts and difficulty of installation, when we received bids, they were considerably over budget. We asked TR Long to redesign the force main in the north travel lane of Arnold Road to avoid the congestion. We, as JWSC, intend to self-install the first 1,000 feet of 12-inch PVC force main in Arnold Road. from the intersection of Demery Road back to the pump station, beginning October 31st. That date was selected because that is the Monday following the Georgia-Florida weekend. There will have to be additional contracts awarded at a later date to directionally drill approximately 300 feet of the force main along the shoulder of Demery Road and to make the 3 tie-in connections, one with the point of termination out in Demery at Mallory, at Arnold and Demery, and then at the pump station. However, because we do not want to have Arnold Road unpaved longer than necessary, each day as we install the pipe, we will temporarily patch the sections that we open cut with cold mix, and we will maintain 1 lane of travel throughout the project. However, to get the cold mix out of there and repave the road, we have went out and asked for paving contractors to be able to begin resurfacing November 14th, so that gives us 2 weeks to get the 1,000 foot of pipe in the ground. And we were able to receive 2 quotes from contractors that said they could start November the 14th. And one of them has actually since wavered on their ability to start November 14th. So the request is to award to Allen Owens Construction at $95,375. We will be paving shoulder to shoulder, even though we're only working in the north lane, because in a couple of areas we will have to deviate into the south lane of travel for a bit due to conflicts in the roadway.
I'll move that we award contract amount $95,375 to Allen Owens Construction paving for paving Arnold Road to pump station 202 North Main replacement.
Second.
Motion second. Any questions? None, all in favor? Motion carries 6-0. Executive Director's update.
Yes, sir. At our last meeting, we re-entered into an agreement so that we can continue the low-income housing water assistance program. So that program for the first year actually ended September 30th. So I wanted to give everybody an update for the first year of that, actually 9 months, because we entered into a contract in December and started awarding assistance in January. The LIWAP program provided our customers with $349,568 towards past due and current water bills. That was 796 accounts that received assistance for an average of $439 per account. So that program was a tremendous success, and re-upping it for the first year for another year was a great decision by us. I mentioned Kimley Horn had pump station projects ready to bid. So Pump Station 3101, 4001, and 4002 rehab projects will be placed for bid in 2 weeks and will be available for consideration at the December meeting, not the November meeting. Fantastic news to report that our distribution system has once again been awarded the GAWP Gold Award for the 3rd consecutive year. And that will be actually presented mid-November at the Georgia Association of Water Professionals Fall Conference being held on Jekyll Island. And the only other thing, before we meet next time, we will have an election. So just a reminder to everybody to make sure you go out and vote, and so that your voice can be heard.
Thank you. Commissioners' discussion. Any commissioners have anything?
I do want to offer comment as to follow what Andrew offered about we're in voting season here. One of the critical items, in my view, that is on the ballot locally is about our SPLOST. JWSC benefits from that, and I'll say JWSC on behalf of our customers and those who will future receive services from us will benefit from that, because that is a partial way to provide capital funds to the utility company to advance and develop and rehab major facilities for the benefit of residents in Glynn County. So as we go about in our community, I hope that we are able to explain very well to anyone who inquires of us about it and how does it benefit the JWSC. Frankly, it allows us to expand new service into areas that have been skipped over many years.
Any other commissioners have any comments? For the chairman's update, I want to commend our entire system. The city of Valdosta, we changed to VT SCADA for our SCADA system. And one of the items we did is getting rid of the old ones that were given to Bonita Springs. But Valdosta wants to come over here and talk with our staff about how they've implemented VT SCADA and also get ideas as to how they're implementing because we do have 165 lift stations and 3 treatment plants and a lot of wells. And Valdosta does not have quite that many lift stations and everything. So I think it's good to have a city like Valdosta want to come get ideas from our system. So I just want to commend both Todd's group and Andrew's group for everything you've done to get our system up like that. And also the water distribution group to get the gold award. That's a hard award to get, and to get it 3 straight years in a row is really good. And finally, have a clean audit again is just great, and I want to commend our finance people. And Andrew, give us an update. There's been some projects that have been funded by the federal government and all this money that comes out, and tell us what got funded the first time and what we've applied for this next go-round.
Yes, sir. Through the American Rescue Plan Act, the state was awarded a certain amount of funds to use for grant programs. In the first round of funding, we received a $1.9 million grant for the installation of UV disinfection equipment at Academy Creek. That equipment has been ordered, but it has a delivery timeline of, I believe, April. So it's going to sit there for a bit before it shows up, but that will enable us to get off of gaseous chlorine disinfection at Academy Creek, which would be beneficial both because of cost variability in the current chemical marketplace, and also just less risk associated with UV disinfection rather than chlorine. The second round, which we're being told awards will be made prior to the end of October, was strictly for water production and service needs to help expanding populations. And so we have applied for 4 grants through that program. One of them would be to install an elevated storage tank at exit 42. And that project, we are currently underway of acquiring property from the Development Authority in order to build that. And so if we are able to get the grant, that will offset some of our costs to construct that tank. 2 other, one project on the South Mainland to convert a well site at the south end of the system near our wastewater treatment facility over to a production well, and to install a new elevated storage tank at the south end to help out with some fluctuating pressure issues we've got in the Clearwater and Satilla Sands area of the county. And that is listed as a SPLOST project, and if the SPLOST passes and we get the grant, then we will match 50% of the project with grant funds and 50% with SPLOST funds, and the remaining SPLOST funds will then be used for further water and sewer extension projects. We are moving forward with engineering design on a conversion project of the Canal Road well, which is actually off of Harry Driggers. It's right there near the intersection of Glencoe and Harry Driggers. That will be converted to a production well with the installation of a ground storage tank, similar to what we recently completed on Perry Lane Road at what we call the Ridgewood well. So that project is under consideration. And the 4th one would be to actually install an elevated storage tank out near the Sterling intersection of Highway 99 and 341. So no guarantees we're going to get any of them, but we're hopeful. We were successful last time, and hopefully we'll be successful again. We should know before our next meeting, hopefully.
Well, I want to commend the entire commission for approving those contract awards. I mean, that's 4 more projects we're going to be working on. And also want to say that, we're moving forward, but we still have things to do. In Academy Creek, we spent a lot of money, but there's still some issues that we're going to be addressing in the future there. But Dunbar Creek, fortunately, we're moving ahead already with the improvements. And with the rain, it all of a sudden told us that we're getting very close to capacity. So that project's already underway and it will be increasing the capacity to 5 million gallons a day. So I want to commend Andrew and his group once again for having the foresight for that. That's my report. Do we have any need to go in executive session? Okay. Hearing none, I have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor? Meeting's adjourned. Thank you very much.